Strengthening ties, the U.S. and Taiwan announce trade talks. Taiwan records its youngest deaths from COVID, with one of the victims just 4 weeks old. A $200 million boost for Taiwan's tourism industry. But is it enough? Plus,
I'm Louise Watt and I'm here at the Geelong River in Taipei to find out how this LGBT team is raising the profile of gay athletes.
A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Yin Khvat. Taiwan has moved one step closer toward a trade deal with the United States. The government has announced talks that it is describing as a historic breakthrough. It comes just a week after Taiwan was left out of U.S. President Joe Biden's newly formed Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. Rick Glowett reports.
At a late-night press conference, Taiwan eagerly announced the first steps towards a much-anticipated trade agreement with the United States.
有没有达到我们预期的目标？我自己在这边先倚老卖老，我等这个等30年了。我们就是希望能够用一个谈判的机制，跟美方建立更密切的关联。
Under the newly announced U.S.-Taiwan Initiative on 21st Century Trade, representatives from both countries will meet in Washington, D.C. at the end of June. On the table, 11 key areas, including trade facilitation, regulatory practices, digital trade, and labour rights.
不仅彰显台美互为彼此的优先贸易伙伴，更说明了双方将携手共同迈向这个共享的经贸愿景。
This comes just days after Taiwan was left out of US President Joe Biden's Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, a new partnership with 13 countries launched last week on his trip to Asia. Taiwan viewed the exclusion as a snub. China, which claims Taiwan as its own, pressures other countries and international bodies from recognizing Taiwan as a nation. But the US has always been a crucial, although unofficial, ally. It provides Taiwan with weapons to counter the threat from China. Taiwan-US ties have grown in recent years, but a free trade agreement has remained a sticking point in the relationship, with the risk of facing objection and repercussions from China.
我们也不希望这个过度政治化来看待这件事情。台湾跟美国的贸易关系经贸关系本来就非常的密切。
But for now, Taiwan, often excluded from global trade agreements, is relishing the chance to be brought in out of the cold. Kamashu and Rick Glowett for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan has recorded the 2 youngest COVID-19 deaths since the pandemic began, a 1-month-old and a 5-month-old. Both infants died at home and only tested positive after they were taken to hospital. Their deaths have been attributed to COVID-19 and organ failure. 13 children have died from COVID in Taiwan. The country is experiencing its worst wave of infection yet, and numbers are not expected to go down soon. Taiwan's COVID-hit tourism industry is getting $200 million in subsidies from the government. It's hoped the stimulus package will revive the battered sector, but some believe money alone won't be enough. Phil Wang reports.
Domestic tourism is getting a boost from the Taiwanese government. Tour groups will receive a subsidy the equivalent of $1,000 from mid-July to mid-December as part of a $200 million package to stimulate the industry. Although tour representatives welcomed the stimulus plan, some said the existing 3-dose vaccine requirement for visitors needs to go.
旅游业其实在去年的8月就一直在苦撑，那撑到今年的3月，是因为370的关系，这个团又取消掉了。
Taiwan is not the only country struggling. The UN estimates that the pandemic has cost up to 120 million jobs globally in the tourism industry. And as the world prepares to go back to normal and moves into living with COVID, soaring oil prices due to the war in Ukraine are reflecting on flight tickets. But to eager travelers, that's acceptable.
不涨的话，好像有点不太合理吧？因为所有东西油价都在涨，你不涨，我觉得航空公司也不尽然撑得下去。
She is not the only one who can't wait to jump on a plane and fly out of the island. Taiwan's Bureau of Consular Affairs, which saw passport applications drop significantly in the past couple of years, said the demand has recently been increasing.
在从3月开始，我们就注意到这个量开始往上冲，然后到35000本哦，所以这个需求的确是越来越多，越来越多。那再加上很多的民众，他手上的护照其实都已经不到1年，或者是过期。
In response to the high demand, the government is simplifying the process. Now the application can be completed with a few clicks in the comfort of your home. As the government makes it easier for departing passengers, entry into Taiwan remains tight, at least for now. The country wants to stay economically competitive, so the Center for Disease Control aims to announce policies within the month for reopening Taiwan's borders. Klein Wing, Eugene Huang, and Phil Wing for TaiwanPlus.
The World Health Organization believes North Korea's COVID-19 outbreak is getting worse, not better, as claimed by Pyongyang. WHO Emergencies Chief Mike Ryan says a lack of independent data makes it hard to know what's really going on in the country of 25 million. North Korea says 70 people have died of COVID, and leader Kim Jong-un has described the situation as, quote, being controlled. But foreign experts are skeptical as few North Koreans are vaccinated and the country lacks the ability for widespread testing. Authorities in a Beijing satellite town have apparently lifted COVID-19 curbs after fighting erupted between locals and the police. Residents of Yanjiao in Hebei province, which surrounds Beijing, were barred from returning to work in the capital despite restrictions being eased there. Commuters confronted police at a checkpoint and demanded to be allowed to return to their jobs. Township officials later arrived at the scene, promising protesters they would be allowed to freely move in and out of Beijing. Some 400,000 people in Hebei travel to Beijing every day for work. Eric Chu, the head of Taiwan's main opposition party, the Kuomintang or KMT, has set off for the United States to carry a message that his party is back.
国民党亲美的路线从来没有改变。那朱立伦到美国去，只是再一次的确认我们跟美国同为民主自由的国家，我们坚定民主自由的立场。
Chu says he is seeking to dispel the idea that the KMT is anti-US. He said he hopes to give the US side a fuller picture of differing political viewpoints within Taiwan. During his trip, Chu will attend the reopening of the KMT's representative office in Washington, D.C. The office closed 13 years ago when the party was in power and pursuing closer ties with China. Chu's trip will include visits to key government agencies and to Congress. An LGBT dragon boat team is gearing up for the biggest race of the year, which begins Friday to mark the Dragon Boat Festival. They're not just hoping for a win, as Louise Watt reports, they're also trying to make it easier for gay athletes to come out. Louise Watt reports.
With more than 100 members, Asia's largest LGBT dragon boat team has been training on this river for more than 6 years. Zhang Yikai, a nurse from Taichung in central Taiwan, is one of their newest members.
加入这个团队之后，我觉得可以认识更多的跟我一样的人，然后让我觉得不孤单。以外，我也可以让我就是更投入在运动里面。
左脚尖朝前，右脚尖朝右。
The all-male Rainbow Punch Dragon Boat team will be competing against dozens of others in the sport's most important event in Taipei to mark the traditional Dragon Boat Festival. But aside from that, one of their coaches says Rainbow Punch hopes to raise the profile of gay athletes in East Asia.
最感动的时刻大概就是在船上的时候，我们让彩虹旗飘扬在河道上。因为以往的运动队员，有时候他们会隐藏自己的身份，隐藏他们自己是同志这件事情，来让自己是安全的。
Public support for LGBT communities has grown in the past 3 years since Taiwan became the first and still the only country in Asia to allow same-sex marriage. But members of the team say it can still be hard to come out as gay because of traditional values and prejudice. And gay professional sportsmen are rare. At last year's Tokyo Olympics, there were only 4 openly gay competitors from Asia. All 4 were women. Rainbow Punch have been training for months, hoping to make waves in Taiwan's largest dragon boat race. But winning isn't the main thing for the team.
For us to show up in this event, is most important part is just trying to tell people we are out there. Yeah, we are Rainbow Punch, we can do it. Not just only straight guys, but all gay guys can do it. Yeah.
Beyond the championships, the members of Rainbow Punch hope to win more visibility and recognition for their efforts as athletes and who they are. James Rayner and Louise Watt for TaiwanPlus.
Coming up, Taiwan's indigenous languages are getting a new lease on life thanks to millennials. We'll explain how they're doing it after the break.
The reason I do the teaching to high school students, I think our high school textbook of social sciences is poorly written. My feeling is when I read those texts, I don't want to be a social scientist anymore. Oh, wow. Okay. So my joke was that those textbooks were written by Fei Die.
I see.
Taiwan's diplomat may be the most frustrating job in the world. They give us pressure, never allowed us to use Taiwan in any place, in our business card, in our letterhead, anything.
I'm Cyrus, see you on TaiwanPlus.
I'm Audrey Tong, see you on TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus. For more great news from Taiwan and around the world, download the TaiwanPlus app.
Okay, there's a couple here. There's one here. You see, 2, 3. 到目前的为止，大概6次而已啊，真的不多。赚不到钱呢，要钱也不够啊。来了，又来了。I'm going to prepare them in a more European way. I'm going to smoke these eels. The best part, put it in your mouth.
In a changing world, when voices are being silenced, TaiwanPlus is listening.
It's hard to legal.
We tell those stories. No compromise, no boundaries,
People in Taiwan.
no fear.
I want to study Chinese. I'm Ryan Kilpatrick.
Capital Taipei.
TaiwanPlus.
TaiwanPlus News.
An iconic food of Taiwan, beef noodle soup. This one is $24 US, $28, $337 US bowl of noodle soup.
Oh, it's expensive.
It's very, very tender, and then it still maintains the characteristics of the fiber of the beef.
It just melts in your mouth almost.
Interesting. I never tried something like that.
Jason's Table, Shocked and Surprised, is on TaiwanPlus.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. Taiwan's President Tsai has inspected several of the country's domestically made weapons. The president travelled to a heavily guarded location in northern Taiwan, where she was given the opportunity to handle the weapons, including a Kestrel rocket, Taiwan's first indigenous rocket launcher. Her appearance comes just days after China sent 30 planes into Taiwan's air defense zone, the largest incursion since January. The United States says it will go forward with a $700 million US dollar weapons package for Ukraine, focused on advanced precision missile systems. US President Joe Biden made the announcement after receiving assurances from Ukraine that they will not use the weapons on Russian territory. It's the 11th US weapons deal for Ukraine since the war started in February. Ukraine wants long-range systems that can hit targets up to around 80 kilometers away. The US had withheld the sale of such weapons after deciding shorter-range missiles would be enough. Also included in the recent arms deal to Ukraine is the Javelin missile system. It's a weapon that both Taiwan and Ukraine possess. And as Jaime Ocon explains, with cross-strait tensions increasing, Taiwan is taking note of how the weapon is being used on the battlefield.
This is a Javelin missile system. Developed by the United States over 30 years ago, it has become one of the most important weapons in Ukraine's fight against the Russian invasion.
The Javelin is really one of the most lethal tank-killing machines on the battlefield. And it really is for multiple reasons. One is it's an anti-tank guided munition that shoots a missile out of it that can penetrate just about any amount of tank armor.
The Javelin's tracking system is known for its so-called fire and forget mechanism, which means that after the trigger is pulled, the missile can automatically fly towards the target and doesn't need anyone to guide it.
No matter where that tank or that helicopter or boat goes, that missile will follow it and will strike it. So that it gives a lot of safety to the gunner, which, when you're smaller is very important. So you can run away. It's a fire and forget, as we call it.
The United States has provided more than 5,000 Javelin systems to Ukraine since Russia invaded the country on February 24th. Ukraine's armed forces say that more than 1,000 Russian tanks have been destroyed. It's partially due to the accuracy of the weapon when it locks onto a target. But experts say what makes it more effective is the unique way in which it fires.
So most tanks, almost all tanks in the world, are designed to fight other tanks. And most of their armor is focused around their sides or the front and the back of them. So they have vulnerable points on the tank. And almost all tanks in the world are vulnerable at the top of the tank. But also it has what's called a top attack capability. The Javelin has a special capability to fire out of the weapon system, go high up into the sky and come down, almost like a mortar round, will come down directly on top of the tanks. So it's very scary for the tanks.
With China next door, which claims ownership of Taiwan, the island is closely watching how Ukraine is trying to fend off the invasion from its bigger and more powerful neighbor. Beijing has been stepping up its military pressure on Taiwan in recent years, sending warplanes to patrol areas near its territory. It has not ruled out taking the island by force. Taiwan is taking lessons on how Ukraine is defending itself and how the Javelin has become an integral part of the defense strategy.
And intelligence is a huge part of that. Even that, like we were talking about in the Javelin, interestingly, it's a heat seeker. So it can attack a helicopter, a tank, a boat.
Taiwan's military has already started test firing at targets on the water, simulating what could be Chinese ships trying to reach the coast. And with 400 Javelin systems set to arrive later this year, Taiwan's military continues to learn from the war in Ukraine, preparing for a conflict that it hopes will never break out. Piper Yu and Jaime Ocon for TaiwanPlus.
Malaysia has banned the export of fresh chickens to deal with rising domestic prices and high demand. The ban is expected to hurt smaller Malaysian poultry farmers who supply to Malaysia's biggest market, Singapore. Under the measure, the export of 3.6 million chickens a month will be halted until prices stabilize. After a 3-year hiatus, Taiwan's biggest book fair, the Taipei International Book Exhibition, has officially opened. It's welcoming local and international publishers, including, for the first time, Ukraine. Louise Watt is there.
I'm here at the World Trade Center in Taipei for the first international book fair here in 3 years. That's because of COVID. Now it's one of Asia's biggest literary events, and before the pandemic it was attracting 500,000 visitors. As you can see, there's already a fairly good turnout so far, given that Taiwan is still going through a huge spike in COVID cases. Demonstrating the importance of this event, the Vice President William Lai turned up for the opening ceremony. Many of the stands around me are international publishers, and France is the guest of honor for this 2022 fair. And there are stands also from Poland, Germany, and the European Union. Now, one of the stands that is expected to attract a lot of attention is Ukraine. And joining me now is Valentina Butenko from Ukraine's national book platform. Now, Valentina, this event is clearly important to you, given that you're here with what's going on back home. Why is it so important?
Well, firstly, I'd like to say it's a huge privilege to be here. Being in Taiwan, given what's going on, isn't what I imagined to be. A few months ago, I was back in Ukraine, hiding from bombs. So this is a really unique opportunity. And, given that, the reason it's so important to be here is because this is a very unique chance for us to bring Ukrainian culture, Ukrainian books, and most importantly, Ukrainian voices into the national stage. Because what Ukraine is facing right now, it's an existential crisis where Russia is seeking to eliminate the very idea of Ukrainians. And Ukrainians, our identity, it's preserved through culture, it's preserved through books. The way to preserve that under this current threat is to bring it into the mass consciousness, to bring it into the mass market. Bringing Ukrainian language and culture and books to the world, it's so crucial in the fight about what Ukraine is fighting for today, about our right to exist and our right for our voices to be heard.
Thank you, Valentina. And as well as giving voices a platform here at the book fair, organisers hope that the 6-day event will also give the whole publishing industry a much-needed post-COVID boost. Louise Watt for TaiwanPlus at the Taipei World Trade Center.
There are 42 indigenous languages in Taiwan. Some of them are in danger of dying out because only older members of the community are able to speak them. But indigenous millennials are on the case. Rick Glowett reports.
YouTuber Sean Bulanyu is Pai Wan, an indigenous group of Taiwan. At 19, he left his community to study in the capital, Taipei. He regularly travels back to his village to explore his culture and shares his experiences online.
我只是想要记录说我们的互动、日常生活，在部落有趣的事情这样子。然后后来做了以后才发现说，其实蛮多在外面就是去市区生活的年轻人啊、孩子啦，他们会有这个需要，他们可以借着这个影片啊、频道。 然后他们可以去回忆之前部落的生活，或者是说他们想家的时候。
Taiwan is home to nearly 600,000 indigenous people, about 2% of the island's population. For decades, indigenous people were treated like second-class citizens in their own home. They were constantly forced to relocate, and their languages were restricted in public spaces. Discrimination still exists. And many of these languages are at risk of dying out.
现在的政府已经采取了一些保护族语的措施，或是要去振兴族语的一些策略。那许多年轻人呢，也开始慢慢认同自己的语言。不过，尽管如此我们根据刚才我们提到的主计处的统计啊，在生活中实际使用族语的人口反而是减少的。
Young indigenous Taiwanese are increasingly taking to social media and the internet to reconnect with and share their language and culture. Illustrator Umav Isbalakam records her language learning on Instagram and Facebook.
I'm from Bunun community. I am kids from Bunun tribe, but I set up this fans page not because I'm good at speaking my own mother tongue, because I'm very not good at speak in Bunun language. So I want to encourage myself and record the process that I'm learning in Bunun.
On popular social messaging app Line, the Indigenous community have created stickers in their mother tongues.
社交媒体跟 LINE 的贴图对族语的宣传或是个人的语言态度的翻转是有帮助的。那因为过去啊，族语被污名化，就是被视为一种原始的语言，落后的，不属于文明的语言。
Taiwan's indigenous people, along with their languages and cultures, were once pushed to the fringes of society. But indigenous millennials, using social media and online tools, are determined to reclaim their identity. Piper Yu and Rick Lowett for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. I'm Yin Khvat. Finally today, a pair of otters at the Taipei Zoo are celebrating the Dragon Boat Festival with specially prepared rice dumplings known as dongzi. Zookeepers have filled them with ice, fruit, vegetables and even seafood. For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, please download the TaiwanPlus app. Stay safe and see you next time.